From Tulsa, Scott Music is essentially a self-taught musician who began playing at an early age. His father was a musician and the home was filled with music. His older brother sang in local bands around Tulsa, and around the same time, Scott began playing drums for a local rock band. Music attended Tulsa Edison High School at the same time as Dwight Twilley, Phil Seymour, and Jamie Oldacre. Throughout his career, Scott has performed live with the band, Chris Christopherson, and Johnny Cash, among many others. He met fellow Oklahoman and future frontman of The Call, Oklahoma City native Michael Bean, through mutual friend Danny Timms in California. In the late 1970s, Scott moved to California with Danny and began playing with Michael when they arrived. Eventually, Scott and Michael formed the band Airtight and added guitarist Tom Ferrier and bass player Greg Freeman, both Californians. Airtight became Motion Pictures, which for a short period of time was Phil Seymour's backup band live and on demos. Phil Seymour introduced the guys to Denny Cordell, who was Leon Russell's partner in Shelter Records. Cordell got the band their first record deal, and they officially changed their name to The Call in 1981. Around this time, Scott's friend Steve Huddleston moved to California and joined the band on keyboards, which rounded out the original lineup of the band. Bean, Music, and Ferrier would remain the founding core of the group through its 20 years of active existence. The band released 9 studio albums from 1982 to 2000, beginning with their self-titled album. Peter Gabriel liked the band so much he asked them to open for his 1982 tour. Their second album, 1983's Modern Roman, saw the band make their first U.S. album chart entry and gave them their first hit single via MTV Airplay, When the Walls Come Down, also a top 20 mainstream rock song. With its social awareness, anthemic sound, driving rhythm, and meditative lyrical perspective, The Call was a different sort of rock band. The Chicago Tribune wrote that The Call, unsung or not, may well be the closest thing America ever had to its own U2. Steve Huddleston left The Call in 1983, making way for Jim Goodwin to take over on keyboards, and Greg Freeman also left around the same time, influencing Michael Bean to take up bass guitar from that point forward. After their 1984 album, Seen Beyond Dreams, which Bean referred to as their metaphysical album, in 1986 The Call released Reconciled, featuring 2 top 40 mainstream rock tracks, Everywhere I Go and I Still Believe, Great Design. 1987's Into the Woods, what Bean called his favorite Call album, kept the band in the mainstream rock top 40 with I Don't Wanna. The 80s closed out with their most successful single, Let the Day Begin, the title track from the 1989 album that hit #1 on the mainstream rock chart. Bean released 2 solo projects in the 90s, and Warner Brothers released the best of The Call in 1996 with a few new songs, some of which were band recordings of Bean's solo efforts. Because of his soaring voice that matched any of the big vocal imprints of the period's modern rock singers, Michael was often asked to play bass and sing backing vocals for artists like Peter Gabriel, Simple Minds, and Bruce Cockburn. A major show of respect occurred on the band's final major label release, Red Moon, with background vocals by U2's Bono on The Call's last chart single, What's Happened to You. The Call released 2 more albums independently, To Heaven and Back in 1997 and their only live album, a recording from their 1990 tour released as Live Under the Red Moon in 2000. After which the group officially disbanded. By 2009, their home state began recognizing the band's accomplishments when the Oklahoma History Center featured an exhibit and book on rock music from the state. Another Hot Oklahoma Night, a rock and roll exhibit, a reference to lyrics about a hot Oklahoma night in The Call's song, Oklahoma. The exhibit served as a catalyst for the future OK Pop Museum and Creative Center in Tulsa. As members of The Call, Scott, Michael, and Steve toured the world as both headliner and opener for many 80s bands. Jim Kerr of Simple Minds says they should have been opening for The Call, and his band looked up to The Call and admired them. T-Bone Burnett, Robbie Robertson, and Martin Scorsese are counted as fans, with Bean playing John for Scorsese in The Last Temptation of Christ. Unexpectedly, Michael Bean passed away in August 2010. He was 60 years old and on tour in Belgium as a sound engineer for his son, Robert Levon Bean's band, Black Rebel Motorcycle Club. In 2013, band members Scott Music, Tom Ferrier, and Jim Goodwin reunited for a series of shows with Robert Levon Bean taking on bass and vocals, released in 2014 on CD and DVD. In 2019, Universal released the 3-CD set The Call Collected, with 6 Michael Biehn tracks added. The band is also the subject of a 2021 book by Noel Hahn, Recalling the Call, the 80s most underrated rock and roll band. Scott has continued playing music, releasing a solo album in 2013, Americana Gold. Now retired, Steve focuses on family after a career flying aircraft. And in 2021, for their contributions to popular music in the United States and around the world via The Call, Scott Music, Michael Biehn, and Steve Huddleston were inducted into the Oklahoma Music Hall of Fame.